I have to read it at some point.
It's a long list.
So we are now
And
live.
I'm very willing to share.
We are live.
Okay,
Yay!
so let's, before we start talking about new things about Vouch, let's talk about what Vouch is.
What is Vouch? Tell me.
So I'm going to read from the summary that I wrote after the summit when I tried to make the page easier to understand because the previous version was old. Okay, if Bob is sending a web mention to Alice, who don't know each other, Alice is never linked to Bob. Bob sends along a third parameter, Vouch, where the Vouch is a URL on Carol's site to a page that has a link to Bob's domain, thus vouching for Bob. And Carol's site is a domain that Alice approves of, has linked so in the past. By doing so, Bob is telling Alice, please accept my web mention because Carol, who you approve of, vouches for me. So that is the concept of a vouch. Now, the challenge of a vouch happens to be, how do you connect two people together? That's been the challenge from the beginning. So receiving is very easy. When you receive a vouch, you verify that you've previously had a relationship with Carol, therefore you approve of Bob. Also, even though I may have approved of Carol in the past, Carol may not be one of the people I'm willing to trust to approve you, which makes it even more complicated. So the most complicated part of it happens to be sending the vouch, not receiving it. On the receiving end, it's just how do you decide whether or not you trust somebody enough, and you could just.
And if I'm sending it, I have to both know that this person vouches for me and that vouch is still valid.
Yes.
Well, the thing is that.
But at the same time, if I have a vouch for somebody and I then no longer trust them, I may not want to publicize that.
So in the original spec, there's no such thing as a vouch. Like you don't post a vouch.
Yeah.
You've just, I don't know, maybe reblogged something from my domain. And therefore, when I send something to David, I'm going to use your reblog as my vouch.
But what if I don't want my reblogs to be considered vouching? If I'm reblogging it because you got some information wrong and I'm trying to correct that.
That's a decision. That's a decision of the receiver.
Which is weird, right?
Yeah.
That should be a decision of the sender, not the receiver.
At least partially. Yeah. Like, I mean, otherwise tons of people would trust, I don't know, Donald Trump because they've.
He's been retweeted 8 billion times.
Because they've retweeted, look at this idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But this is why Vouch has not gained wider adoption.
I would
because of the systematic problems in figuring out who you trust on both sides. Now, how do you figure out somebody you're going to recommend to somebody else as a vouching individual? And how does somebody else say, well, okay, well, just because I approved of something of that individual did in the past, does that mean I approve of anybody that they trust?
And even
how do I indicate I approve?
Exactly, because even if I trust Rose,
which is a debatable thing.
No, but I trust Rose, and Rose has reblogged something 3 years ago. Does that mean Rose still trusts the person she reblogged 3 years ago?
Must I trust that the voucher knows the source? How can I trust that anybody who sends me a web mention with voucher when someone I'm linked to, should I just trust them? No notion of trust is needed, just links. You're only verifying that the vouch, presumably a permalink at the voucher's site, links to the source's site.
Which makes it a very weak signal.
Yeah, which makes it just a very weak signal, because that just means that okay, this probably isn't a spam site because someone I know has linked to them, but it doesn't mean this person can definitely doesn't have to go to my comment.
I mean the anti. I mean that's kind of the thing. I guess it comes from an anti-spam background.
Okay. How does the markup for this look?
There's no markup.
There's no markup.
It's just
remember, it's an extension to web mention.
Okay, because what I was thinking is if I trust somebody, I would much rather explicitly state that I trust this person.
I think
and therefore it would be smart if there was, say, a view vouch or a rail vouch.
I think the framing of trust is maybe not the right one. Because trust implies a lot more than I think they're not a spammer.
Well, after the last
session. Are we looking at this purely from a not a spammer, or are we looking at this from this person does not go around posting hateful information? Because part of the moderation.
It was originally not a spammer.
I think,
that's why it's a weak signal.
Yeah, I think that's why. Yeah, I think the way it's designed,
So how does that help in skipping the moderation queue? Because for me, at the very least, and for a lot of people, the moderation queue is as much about whether or not this content is not hateful.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you don't do other forms of checks on it.
It's kind of it's.
So I have a blacklist. It's built into most systems where if any word is in there that's a keyword, it'll put it into moderation. The idea is that you could remove some of the most basic checks by saying, okay, well, this person has some level of trust higher than normal. Now, if you go back to the last indie web group here in Berlin, there was actually a related discussion of this that was talking about what you do once you've actually approved or something. It was
so briefly, one could maybe do like that. There are some signals that are clearly positive. I mean, the strongest one would probably be
an approval of a weapon.
Would be XFN, like your friend, which exists.
Sure.
Yeah. So the idea that I had last time, which was the conversation during the summit, was to make it based on followers. So to improve my followers page, and that's where you'd go to find people to vouch. So you'd put it on the person who's sending the vouch to do some work, but why shouldn't the sender make it easy to say, well, prove to me you know some of these people? And that's been sort of the stumbling block. But this is just to quote the 2018 Berlin Responses Seminar, which you were not in attendance, according to the notes, but you were here, where there were a bunch of different categories for display, which actually mirror the vouch categories, which would be you have an acceptance list, a general, a second degree contact, everybody else, and a blocked and muted list. So these are the people you trust 100%. These are the people you have second degree connections with. These are the people who you...
So it's dependent partially on the degrees of separation.
Yeah, but again, that may be a good philosophy for Vouch. Remember, how you deal with vouching as a secondary factor is based on who's receiving it. So the receiver can do all that stuff. It's not part of the protocol because the protocol doesn't actually say anything about how the voucher and the vouchee decide on how that relationship works. And part of that problem has created nobody's implementing Vouch because we haven't made any. It shouldn't be a part of the spec, but it should be recommended practices that people can try to implement.
And it's also somewhat necessary for at least an idea for picking a useful vouch. Like, how far do I, more or less, can I pick any random link, or do I have to go to the effort to guess, like, okay, Rose probably trusts recommendations from them because she has linked them as a friend. So I'm assuming our software is considering that fact. I should use that one and not the random one from the IndieWeb wiki.
But at the same time, they should. You mentioned rel friend. I'm thinking that should play into Vouch, right? Because if I say that my
you also have rel friend, rel follow,
then you should be automatically approved, and you shouldn't have to like sit in a moderation queue because you are my friend. And so that ties in to Vouch.
Yeah, and you're trusting that your friend isn't going to say something that you might want to moderate later, but there has to be some degree of trust you're going to be moderating everybody.
Yeah. And that's what I'm currently doing, which I hate. Yeah. Because whitelisting's all whatever.
Yeah. I mean, try to fix whitelisting. That's kind of important.
Well, we're waiting on the pull request. So.
Okay.
Oh, I wrote
David's already fixed it.
Okay.
Yeah, the problem is that it's part of a different pull request. I think I need to separate it out and just send it by itself.
Because the other one is big and takes time to review.
Yeah, it was part of several different fixes, and I may just pull out that fix and send it separately. But then you also have to, unless you deploy it from the GitHub repo, you also have to wait for it to go to stable.
Which happily deploy from GitHub.
Yeah, which I can't do.
It's still working. I can
fix it for you on your site manually in about 10 seconds.
Okay.
It is one missing step.
Perfect. Then
we'll talk before you leave.
Thank you. The whitelisting not working is driving me insane.
Me too, but apparently I didn't have to push it. Either way, back to Vouch.
Yeah.
So.
But then that whitelisting actually does play directly into Vouch, because if I'm whitelisting people, then I'm saying essentially that I'm vouching for them.
And you've just identified how WordPress does vouching if you enable it, which it's disabled by default. That's actually the exact build.
Yeah.
It uses that exact whitelist.
But it would be pretty nice if there was like a little hidden page somewhere where I could say, hey, I've whitelisted these people. And then that could be used to find, like, to see whether or not I vouch for them.
Yeah.
And then if I vouch for them, then they can jump.
And that's the idea of a followers page. That was the next step that it went to.
But at the same time, like, I don't want own your swarm on my followers page.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is the idea of where to find the vouch people was tied into the idea of followers when we were talking about it in the summit.
Yeah,
where it was, okay, well, where can we find a list of people we trust? Why not start publishing your followers as a followers page. And then on that page, you can say who's a friend by doing rel friend, which means you end up getting into XFN and all these other relationships.
And you start to and to find vouchers, you're starting to do data mining with the graph database too.
Yeah.
Which is kind of
that's also the problem, right? Like at some point I was able now I know who you trust. Now I need to find a post that they have once upon a time made where they link to me. Because that's what I need for a vouch.
And that's back to.
And then I have to go and crawl there. Like, say that you say, oh, I trust Aaron. Cool. Now I need to troll through Aaron's last year of posts to find whether he once has linked to me. Because otherwise I don't have a vouch to send you.
So essentially what you need is you need like a list of people that you trust and a list of people that you've linked to.
Well, we do have
needs to be somewhere
Ben Roberts' protocol on this. So Ben Roberts, who actually is one of the few people who implemented it, came up with this. Record all incoming refer entries and store them to a queue. Asynchronously parse this list to check that the URL is actually linked to you without a rel equals no follow. If it is valid, add to a list of vouch URLs. Call that list V. When sending a web mention, use function F that takes a URL and Boolean R.
I mean, too,
By the way, on my list of things to do, write this in less technical English. Check to see if the target URL's domain, D_D capital T, is in list V. Does V parentheses DT return about? That's why I'm saying.
I need a freaking diagram.
Yeah, I said this is a really bad description, but it's accurate.
This is a state machine.
I mean, this with Java is kind of weird, but that's kind of the point.
This site directly refers.
If you also have a web mention enabled site, then you have a record of many incoming links because you got a web mention from them.
Yeah, but right now.
But if it's not a database, it's probably going to be pretty hard to search.
Yeah, then you probably should build a database of like the last.
But for people using flat file CMS, like the whole point is no database.
Yeah, okay, but the database can be like a file with a line at the end. And if you get.
Yeah, you can have a flat file search.
Yeah.
But in your case, you have this capability.
Yeah, I mean, like, and like even
thinking back to previously.
Yeah, and your web mention endpoint can, when it receives the mention, like make a record somewhere specifically this domain, this URL, that's the last link.
The problem is just that you're building some sort of
extra storage.
Last time domain X linked to me lookup thing, whether that's a database or not. Because next time I'm going to link someone, I'm going to send a web mention. I'm going to check the receiver to whom I'm sending.
I mean,
who do they trust, and is that trusted person in my storage of people who have linked to me? Because that's the only way I can find a vouch URL.
By the way, there's more. Look at all URLs on page T for U and T. Look up all domain of U, DU, and V. If this return V, if we are to recurse on a page, then look for rel equals me. If we have not found a vouch, then we are to recurse tech domain base page.
Rel equals me.
Yeah.
How does that affect vouchers?
Well, so just trying to parse this into English, which I'm having a little trouble with. You look at for every target, for T being the target domain, look at all of the URLs on the target domain. If the original URL, look up the entire domain. If this returns a value where it is your vouch, stop processing. If we were to recurse on the page, then check for the rel me, and you can also look on the top level page and then look through the entire site.
Not sure what that's trying to accomplish.
You check.
Try to find the home page.
You check every page on the site for a link.
Yeah, there's no way that somebody would scrape my website.
Well, here we are with it being, it's not required, but it says it is an optional option here to recurse. However, we're going to the other problem of, as I said, that this is technologically expensive.
Very expensive. And for somebody who's trying to write like a small thing where they can send a web mention and be like, oh, and by the way, like I can skip some of your moderation queue because this person links to me. Like the overhead involved right now is insane.
Yeah.
And not for you as a receiver, right?
No, for me as a receiver, but for the person trying to send it, they're just not going to bother.
Well, the first one is one that is the only one that's somewhat realistic. All incoming refer entries, you could store them and then parse them to see if it's linking to you, and then create a list of potential things you could search through later.
Yeah, I mean,
that works.
Or like the example, like the recording from the web mention endpoint.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of something that would make more sense. It really gets more complicated if you try to give more meaning to the things than like the really basic one. they link, the more detail you have to search, the more complex it gets. So I'm not sure if it can reasonably scale over the minimal. This is probably not spam.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? So even if you're doing that and you're storing referrals and you're storing all the web mentions you receive and you build this lookup database so you can always send a vouch, how much does that vouch then mean? Because if that vouch only means, all right, you're probably not a spammer, was that worth all the effort?
No.
Well, that's why you get to the second level. It's suggesting that when those target domains come in, that you look for all of the URLs on that page and you store more of them. But again, that's the expensive
But still,
part.
but then, like,
that's
then
expensive
I
pitch.
have a URL. Okay, cool. I have a URL now. I can send the vouch. I've done all this expensive stuff.
Yeah.
Now I can send a web mention with a vouch. But
And it
if
means
that
that I
vouch
just
only means, like, you are probably not a spammer, if that's all the value it's given, was it even worth all this expensive work to find a vouch URL in the first place?
And this is where we have a problem with a good idea that is not necessarily being used practically, and we have to find a practical solution, or else.
Well, I mean,
now remember, it's used
also
as
kind
an
of the thing that
anti-spam, not an anti-moderation.
Yeah, it's a solution to a problem that where we only have like some assumptions about how it would happen. I mean, like, I guess that would kind of help against the typical pingback, trackback spam.
But what I'm thinking.
But so would a hash, or what's it called?
Yeah,
proof of work.
I'm not sure that's nicer. Actually, no.
Nobody wants to do a hash cache. Huh?
Actually, not necessarily if you assume that a lot of the spammers are hacked machines.
Yeah, so maybe they will do proof of work. Sure. Proof of work is extremely easy.
I'm wondering if the solution to this, like Lifehacker, they have like a staff discussions or an approved discussions section, and then they have all of the comments. I'm wondering if maybe like stuff that's gone through Vouch, if that should show up, but like maybe CSS styling is slightly different or something like that, and there's just a little like, and then for the people that have actually been approved, whether that's because they're whitelisted or whether that's because they've gone all the way to
somebody is taking more notes than I am, right?
No. Because
did somebody take more notes than I am?
I don't even have the Etherpad.
/Vouch.
Yeah, probably. But like, if somebody's been approved, then it would be like Twitter checkmark, Instagram checkmark, or something, which shows that their comment has been approved. But if they've only been vouched for and they haven't gone through all of the approval, then maybe it shows up, but it's just not yet approved. So that when people are scrolling through the comments, they can see, okay, these ones like have actively been approved by the person who runs this website or the people who run this website, and this other stuff, okay, it's here, but maybe I shouldn't trust it completely.
Yeah.
Like maybe that is a better thing than a purely anti-spam.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what's your specific issue you're having. Like, it's completely different if like you're defending against some equivalent to random trackback spam for cheap Chinese handbags versus personal attacks versus, I don't know. So it's kind of the problem that you can, without having the problem, it's hard to make good estimates what will work and what will not.
And again, you still have to make the call on how much value do you give a vouched thing over a non-vouched thing. Is all the value only in, okay, they're probably not a spammer? Well, that doesn't help you at all in moderation.
Well, you still have the other category. They're probably somebody I trust. Yeah. What you don't have is the iffy people. The second degree are the ones where you have trouble.
Probably someone you trust. How do you mean? Like if I find a page on Rose's website that happens to link to my domain, I can send that as a vouch to you. How much trust did that link that Rose posted 3 years ago? How much trust does it give?
Maybe there should be a half-life.
Maybe there should be a half-life.
But if I posted that yesterday, then that should have considerably more value than if I posted it 5 years ago.
So published date has relevance.
Definitely.
Could be.
People change opinions over time. Everything changes with time. So something that happened 10 years ago should maybe not be considered an endorsement for something that's happening today.
So those are the things you very quickly get into what is the value the vouch is adding, and if all the value that's being added is like we can be relatively sure that it's not a spam domain that's sending this, because one of
Everyone
us
say
has
hi to
linked to it.
Jack Jameson.
Yes,
by the way.
he's writing notes. Thank you, Jack.
I was just going to go back to the video later and retroactively take the notes.
No, but I think like that's the first thing you as a receiver will need to figure out for yourself is this thing having a vouch. What does that actually mean?
Yeah.
According to
But
the
maybe that
spec,
should
it
also
means very little.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
maybe at the same time,
Because it
like
does.
vouching should be like that should be something that I have to set up as a receiver. What do I determine vouch to mean?
Yeah.
Like, what does this allow the person sending a vouched for comment that I can verify is correctly vouched for mean? Like, do I want to just automatically approve stuff that's vouched for? Do I want to put it at the top of my moderation queue? Do I want to say actually anybody that's sending a vouch is a spammer? Because something has
Because this whole thing is a honeypot scheme, and only spammers are going
Well, right
to
now,
implement this.
by the way, right now, anybody sending a vouch you should trust.
Because it's Gregor or who?
Ben Roberts, who life has taken him away a bit.
Okay. Jack is doing an excellent job of summarizing.
Yes. So anybody currently implementing the vouch system is probably safe. However, that's not going to continue if it gets popular, which was sort of the hope.
Exactly,
Yeah,
which
I mean,
means that me as a receiver of the vouch, I need to be able to rate that up and down.
Yeah.
Versus.
But the basic purpose was originally for spam.
Yes.
So it would work for spam. Because, again, nobody you know is linking to spam. So it'll work 100% of the time for preventing spam.
So one of the ideas was, I think, also to say, we want every web mention to have a vouch. And at that point, by doing that, you can get rid of a lot of spam, because stuff that either doesn't include vouch or doesn't have a valid vouch, you can just mark as spam immediately. You don't even have to put it in your moderation queue.
Yeah.
That would be the other end of the solution, right? So everything's still going to your moderation queue, except stuff that isn't vouched isn't even going there. It's just straight to spam.
Yeah, okay, but then you basically make it impossible to enter like a community space without doing something. And
yeah,
and we have that already in some other areas, but it's not quite as hard as Vouch. Vouch, the figuring out Vouch URLs is a pain, and not only that, you have to start gathering data. If you look at the only algorithm we have, you have to start gathering data about everything. And if you want to retroactively go back, you're going to have to run some sort of function to do it, which means Vouch works better the longer you have it turned on, the longer you start running these background processes to actually look these vouchers up.
Yes. I mean, every comment you've ever received over web mentions can function as a vouch, so you can very easily seed that lookup list.
Well, on a practical note, looking up all of the people who've ever linked to you and showing that somewhere, that's a useful thing in other forums.
Maybe.
At the same time, like.
Well, for statistical reasons, if you want to run reports on, if you want to look at your own personal.
At the same time, like some people have taken things that I've quoted out of context and posted it on their websites, and I don't want to look at that. Like, I don't vouch for that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'm not talking about you posting that. I'm saying you're using it to see who's linking to it.
Interestingly enough, those people are vouching for you.
Yes. Which is kind of hilarious because they definitely didn't mean to.
But it doesn't matter, because even if...
Wait, should somebody only vouch for me when they have a properly marked up link? So it would have to link to my H card, right?
No, it has to link to anywhere on your website.
Because remember, this is web mentions, not my performance. So it's a web mention level protocol.
It's just anywhere on your website, because that way you can say, look, these people have linked to my website before. My website is not a spam site, and you trust those people.
Now,
so I am not a spam.
Could you choose to trust people who mark up their stuff with micro formats more than not? Sure. I certainly would consider that. But again, look at WordPress. You have people who don't know what they're doing marking it. So it's not always an education.
But it's so the interesting thing is that those people who have quoted you out of context are now vouchers for you. So if you think that I don't trust you because we've never been in touch, but you know for some reason I've been in touch with one of those people criticizing you, then you can send a comment to me and use their link as a vouch because they've linked to you. And they might never have wanted to vouch for you. They don't want you in their circles. They don't. That doesn't matter.
Hey, you joined us.
It's still, they are still kind of saying that your website isn't a spam site, right? Because that's why they contacted you on the first place.
Yeah.
So for anti-spam, it again works.
Yeah.
But it's anti-spam and it's not level of trust.
Yeah.
So you can't skip moderation queues and you can't.
Yeah.
Why not?
Because
that's something that we
you've
were
specifically written that it's not trust. It's in the spec.
It's in the spec,
FAQ.
actually.
Yeah, and also, but in the Etherpad, Jack Jameson is being very helpful because we're much too lazy and is taking notes for us.
Is he really?
Yeah.
So
I
this
gave
goes.
I gave him karma.
Is this Etherpad vouch?
Yep.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And I suggested, just to catch you up a little bit, that instead of this being a purely anti-spam solution, you could show the comments or the web mentions as they are, but without indicating approval, and you indicate approval on people that have been whitelisted or have gone all the way through a moderation workflow.
So it's not strictly anti-spam or trust. What it really is it gives you a way to assign like social confidence and accountability.
But we don't have enough documented to help people decide how they could do that. That's
Yeah.
always been the problem. There aren't enough documented methodologies of thinking about this that anybody's actually implemented in order to get other people motivated to try to come up with new ideas on this. It just sort of sat there for the last 5 years. So we keep trying to kickstart Vouch, and we keep failing to kickstart Vouch as an idea. So it's stayed where it was since IndieWebCamp Cambridge 2014. By the way, just for your benefit, that's Massachusetts, not.
I guess
Okay.
that it was not the Cambridge in the UK.
Just wanted to make sure I'm covering myself.
Well, there is IndieWebCamp Oxford coming up.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I
but
know. That's why I
Oxford
thought,
and Cambridge usually compete. Which
That's-
doesn't necessarily mean they host the same event.
that's why after that, I think we renamed it IndieWebCamp MIT because I thought it was.
Yes, Jack, you're correct. That was Tantek. Thank you.
And one of the interesting things is that one of the few people I know that sends vouches is Gregor. He actually uses GitHub to vouch for him.
Oh.
So he
That's a
says
point.
my vouch is github.com/GregorLog because that links to my homepage, and I just made a post on my homepage domain. So if I were to say I trust GitHub, then I can go and look like this GitHub link. Does it link to Gregor's domain? Yes, it does. Okay.
So you could actually
GitHub has vouched for Gregor.
So you're kind of using it as a parent in the auth type, like you're the same way that in
Well, me.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Sorry.
That's not really that useful, though. I mean, there's
Barrier for entry is too low.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not very likely to
Okay.
trust
Like, I would
GitHub
not
as a
trust
voucher,
Twitter.
right?
Or
Yeah,
because-
Twitter was
let
the
me
one that
give
came
you
up
the analogy.
previously.
The analogy is like random person shows up to your home, rings the doorbell, and they could say one of several things. One thing they could say is, "Oh, hey, I'm friends with so and so, who is someone you know who is already at your house," and so you can say, "Oh, okay, come on in."
And then the
Because
police
our
are
presumption
involved
is-
because they have started a wild party and
There's feathers everywhere and you have no idea where they came from.
I think you're projecting.
But I
No,
mean,
the point is that
realistically,
the point is
yeah.
that you don't have to trust. You don't have to give absolute trust in their statement of assertion because you know that they're going to come inside and see the person they claim to know, or the person they claim to know is going to see them, and it's going to be revealed very quickly whether or not they're trusted. They're actually trusted, and if not, one of two things will happen. Either the person will be like, "I don't know this person," and you'd be like, "Bye, sorry, leave my
but they're
house."
already in your house
Right, so you kick them out,
somehow.
including the person that's with you.
that's called deleting
Let's
the
assume,
comment.
yeah, let's assume you have the ability to kick them out. That's in this model that is true. Or the person's like, "Oh, hey, how's it going, so and so?" So you're like, "Okay, cool, my friend knows them." And then later on, they like end up breaking something, or they smoke in your house or something, and then you're like, "Dude, your friend sucks. What the hell?" And so then you know, okay, I can't depend on you to vouch for people. So the point of Vouch is that it gives you a way, it gives you like a path to action based, like it increases sort of like accountability.
But where do I specify on my site that, okay, these people are cool, but I don't really trust them to vouch for other people? Where do I specify that? Yeah, how do I?
You don't.
But it would be pretty good to be able to say, like, okay, well, Martin's great. I love his stuff, but he sucks at making friends. No, that's, you know, but you get the idea.
Maybe I do. You don't know my friends.
The point of vouch is that the only thing that you're being asked to vouch for is this person's not, this person is like okay to accept like responses from, essentially, like comments and likes and reposts, like, you know, bookmarks or whatever. Like, you're not asking them to like trust their reviews on something or trust their opinion on.
It's just
like,
a case
you
of
know,
like, if somebody is vouching for spam websites.
then you'd be like, dude, why are you linking to spam websites? And then you.
But if I've accidentally said that I trust this person for vouchers, how do I unsay that?
You stop linking to them.
Even if they previously had good content, I then have to break all of my links to them.
Yeah.
Aaron has to go back through 10 years of content and remove all the links he has.
That's putting
because
a
otherwise he
lot
might
of
be vouching
emphasis.
for the wrong people.
I would much rather be able to say,
well, the nice
have
thing
a
is
vouch
that
blacklist.
you can. Oh, you mean on your site?
Yeah, where I can say,
so
okay,
those,
like,
you don't want to go change your links. You just want to say, I am disavowing.
Yeah, exactly.
The following websites.
I can see that happen if, I don't know, maybe a Twitter handle, something along those kinds. And Aaron has conversations with them 10 years ago, and his archive is huge on the website, or yours, in fact. And then now this Twitter handle is some whole douchey other person who writes self-help books or whatever.
Or it's stolen by a spammer and taken over.
Yeah, but it doesn't even have to get stolen. Like, or they turned their career upside down and now they're writing douchey self-help books, like whatever. Yeah. But now you suddenly have to go back 10 years in time and update your website to no longer link to them, or to add the rel no follow, I guess, to all those links.
Well, there was a discussion earlier of published time frame, that you're not looking at their vouchers for all time. You're looking at pages dated, so you discard old.
So that's the nice thing, is that you can look at you can look at a vouch, which is a URL. It's presumably a post where you link to where someone linked to someone. And if it's an H entry, you can get the publish date and be like, well, this is an old vouch. I don't know if I actually trust this person.
That was one of the things that came up.
Yeah. So I think that's a reasonable factor to include as the consumer of a vouch. And that's something that you can dial it up or down as well. You can be like, I don't want to distrust this person just because someone that they talked to 5 years ago is now a jerk. You could say, well, maybe I can trust the people that they've talked to in the past year. Maybe I'll just set it, So you don't need to basically disavow someone completely. But that is the idea of how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be interactive. Like, there's no way to say something is like an absolute vouch. Like, you receive a comment, one of your friends vouched for it, turns out to be, if it is a crappy comment, you have a path of action to go to your friend and be like, hey, why did you vouch for this person? And then your friend might say,
how do you do that in the vouch system? I understand how you do that in real life, but what is the way of reporting to somebody what their vouchers think?
You report them. Report to them.
You have a choice. As the person who received the crappy comment, you have a choice. Either you can decide to be social and contact your friend through whatever means you normally contact them, because they're a friend, and be like, dude, what's up? Why are you linking to this evil person? Or you can decide to be antisocial and say, I don't want to talk to my friend because I'm antisocial. So instead, I'm going to distrust their vouches. And you put them in a vouch blacklist.
Well, back to...
So that's your choice.
Yeah, some of these people aren't friends. They're acquaintances. There are people whose work I read online that I respect by virtue of their work who I don't actually know, is my point.
Yeah, but do you then even accept them?
That's the point. All you have to do is respect their work. So you're basically saying, okay, because I respect their work, I am going to allow comments from people that they respect and link to.
Yeah, but then you can't go to them if they're with that. You do have
no,
to
but then you stop using them,
it's
right, as a voucher.
Yeah, I'm just saying it isn't being antisocial then. It's just not knowing them.
Not accessible, sure.
No,
Yeah.
but then your option is to not trust them. But to again go to
They're like, oh, they're friends with too many people. I don't trust them.
Yeah, so I, for example, probably wouldn't. Now I don't publicly display web mentions, so it's not really a problem for me. But I wouldn't. I would think twice about accepting vouchers from Aaron's website because he communicates with tons and tons and tons of people.
Mm.
And just the fact that he communicates tangentially with these people
does not mean that he necessarily approves of them.
Exactly. Doesn't mean that he has any idea over the sort of content these people normally post. He just replied to an OAuth tweet, right?
Sure. And they may have some other tweets that are nasty.
And all the tweets above and below that tweet might be very, very bad. And so Aaron can very easily accidentally vouch for people.
Yeah,
because
he
is very
vouching.
social.
He is vouching that they are okay to talk about OAuth.
Yeah, but
sure,
but then you
but
have to
I don't
start
think any
scraping the
vouching
content
system
or
is going to
something.
get that specific.
Well,
Yeah.
it
At
could
least
get
not
that
to start.
That's up to you as the vouch consumer.
Yeah, I'm just more saying, well, at this stage in the vouch process, we'd be happy if we got any vouching, not necessarily the detailed level of vouching that would require.
Right.
So that's where you kind of get into what Rose said, where it's like, maybe I want to be able to say that I vouch for these people. Like, not every person I ever link to on my website, but these people are fine.
Yeah, well, the only thing that you might trust people who have the most tenuous vouch relationship is where we started out, anti-spam. Spammers are very unlikely to be linked to by people you know.
Yeah.
Now, horrible people may be linked to people. So at least you've marked them as not spam, but not necessarily good. So you still have a benefit. You don't have to moderate them. You can send them straight to your spam queue if they don't meet that, or you can send them out of your spam queue. Then we get to not everybody is doing vouchers. So back to the original problem. So what would be the criteria? This is sort of a specification question for it to make sense for everybody to do vouchers.
I think as a receiver, I would like to have both a whitelist of people. Hey, if this person is vouched for them, I'm going to trust the people that the person vouching for them knows what they're doing, and all these people.
But that's
are great.
the default.
Yeah. And then I would have a blacklist of this person vouches for way too many people, either just because they interact with a huge number of people and it's impossible to do that. So I don't want to accept those kind of web mentions, and everything else ends up in a moderation pile.
Sure.
I just wish the Indie map was updated more often, because that would be a great way to do this.
Indie map?
You can program.
Ryan Barrett's search of it, I forget the last time he actually did a run, because he doesn't do it every day.
But surely anyone could theoretically run it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think the first one was like a 6 months project.
Yeah.
He was building the tooling doing that, of course, but still.
Yeah, but
it's a big thing.
You feeling okay?
I mean, he's standing up, right? That's a good sign.
Okay.
Yeah, like I'm not feeling like throwing up my nose. That's quite a bit. I think I would feel more annoyed with myself if I stayed at home. So
You're gonna get more rest tomorrow then, right?
as long as I don't infect anyone else, it was probably the better choice to come here. So.
I have hand sanitizer with me. If anybody is that concerned, I'm just going to trust you not to infect
I'm
me.
deliberately not
Or take vouch
touching
for
him.
you. So you're good.
Deliberately not touching.
Well, actually, I don't think if you weren't sick, I'm not really a touchy person. So.
There you go.
But the whole question is, the final one is, how do we move this forward? How do we get more vouching?
I honestly believe if you started allowing vouched comments to show up without moderation, that would provide sufficient incentive for people to start sending vouchers to people that had that plugin.
Yeah, but we're back to we don't trust things 100% even if they are vouched.
That's okay. The
I
point
think
is
to
they can
start
always
with,
undo it.
We need to just trust stuff that's vouched for. Because,
Yeah,
and also,
it's small enough that you can do that right now.
Yeah, the
Also-
community is small enough, and it's a choice the user makes.
Yeah.
I might be willing to do that.
And you're talking about the minimum viable vouch implementation, right?
Yeah, it is minimum.
So what you can do is, I think all you really need to do to make that work is what Rose said, which is, folks, like you just need it's not really a blacklist. In fact, we should not use the terms whitelist and blacklist
no,
because they're
that's
kind of
bad terminology.
bad terminology. Yeah, exactly. It would be better. It's not even either one of those. It's I might like you, but I don't like your friends. And I don't know what the term is for that.
Well, it's a vouch list.
distrust.
No, but you don't distrust them.
You distrust the
You just don't
recommendations or like
trust their taste in people.
Well, then
No
the highlight.
follow?
That's
Or-
not true either, because no
No?
follow means you don't.
Yeah.
You're saying no follow to this link.
Yeah.
Right. This is a very subtle type of list.
Yeah.
This is like a.
I don't know. What
Well, it would
it's
be
voucher specific, like an
the
exclusion.
trusted vouchers, which is the people
Trusted
you trust.
vouchers.
But because do you even need the blacklist?
I think
Because
that,
everything
I
that's
think you're
not
going to need.
whitelisted
I
is.
think you're going to need.
I think that's how you deal with the problem of something came through without moderation because someone I know vouched for them. And the immediate thing you can do is say, is that the UI for that, and this is really a UI problem, the UI for that as a receiver should, like, you should be able to be like, oh, mark this comment as spam or whatever. And
How about allow
Then-
vouch and disallow vouch?
your system knows, oh, it made it through because there was a vouch. The automatic thing your system should ask you is, do you also want to disavow vouches from this person? You know, whatever the intermediary was.
Yeah. But I mean,
And then you could be like, yes, disavow vouchers from this person. That maybe we call it a disvouch list. I don't know.
I was thinking of just allow vouch and disallow vouch because I mean.
Well, you don't
it's
need to do the allow vouch because that should
yeah,
be the
you
default.
only need one of the two lists.
You should only do the latter because the idea is that the system learns according to your social pressure, right? So you put someone on the disavow list, and basically you're saying, I don't trust your friends.
Disavowing does have a fairly wide reaching.
This also comes then with.
Sounds like
uh,
Michelle.
And all it
interesting-
means is that, yeah, exactly.
But
It
this
all
comes-
means is that person comment goes into moderation.
Yeah. But this is an
Disavowed
interesting
by the
thing.
administrator.
Yeah. This is an interesting by effect where it's like, say, we're not trusting Aaron because he has too many contacts. Just not because Aaron, but just too many links on his website. But I do trust Sven.
Because he's conservative.
And yeah, he posts one post a year.
Well, I mean, like,
So
Evan
that's fine.
gets in Twitter fights with.
Yeah, no, but
With
just
Dave
as the-
Weiner?
As
No.
the example, like Aaron has a lot of posts.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
a lot of links might slip in, so I don't trust Aaron. I do trust Sven, who only does one post a year, so that's fine. And now Rose wants to send me a web mention.
How does she know?
How does she know that if she uses a
what
vouch
I
from
should
Sven,
do,
she
I
comes
should have
through?
just
But
sent
if she
you one
uses a vouch from Aaron, she's not coming through.
So it's just like when she shows up to your party,
That's true.
she knows, oh,
But
I
you
know-
to my
you
party,
I would
really
say
trust-
I know
you
Aaron and
trust-
Sven.
you trust Sven's friends because you know Sven is very
But that is
yeah,
like,
but
But
you
how
look
do
at my
I
party,
know?
Aaron is
How does
also
she-
there.
because you're friends with both of them.
So
And
I
you
say
know,
that I'm friends with Aaron and Sven.
you know.
And so I send
well,
two
you
vouchers.
can send, yeah. So that's a proposed extension.
Which
or
I would think
addition
would be
is
better
to
because
send multiple vouch
Yeah,
URLs.
because she wouldn't know who to pick.
Yeah,
because
but then
I
your
am
query
friends
is
with
gonna
both
get
Aaron
rid
and
of
Sven.
it.
Just like you know who to pick, she knows who to pick.
But I mean,
Can we set a maximum on that? Because somebody's going to try to send every single URL.
sure, you have to set a maximum on it.
I would say 3. Because if they get like, and then you can make it as the receiver, you can say, hey, if they've got at least 2 positive vouchers or 1 positive vouch, that's cool with me.
And if you
But if
send
they-
4, it should automatically reject it.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
if like 2 out of 3 of the vouchers are from people I don't trust, maybe this person's not a good person. So then I can say on my end fairly easily, hey, put this in the moderation queue.
Because the,
Yeah.
The reason
I mean,
I'm
like,
saying
if
more
you also
more
make
than the
decisions-
maximum should be disavowed is you're
Spammers.
start thinking of the spammers getting a hold of Vouch someday. They're going to just send every single link they can think of.
Well, I think starting with 3 is a fairly
Because
simple thing.
you can gamble.
Because 2 is
If
very-
let's say that you are a malicious person and you want to get through, you can gamble that the more you send, the more likely that somebody's going to trust one of them.
I think the opposite is going to be true, which is that
a lot
the
of those
person
are going to be
will check the
interesting.
vouchers, and if you start checking the vouchers sequentially, and like you come across like 1 vouch that doesn't check out, 2 vouchers that don't check out, 3 vouchers that don't check out,
you
you're just like, oh, screw you.
Yeah.
So then
So it's actually riskier to
To send
send
more
more vouchers. Like the
Okay.
only reason you're sending more vouchers is that because you're thinking, well, I don't know which of these people they may trust more, and so I'm gonna
Yeah.
send them a few.
I mean,
but if it's defined that way in the spec, then that would work.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It has to be written that way.
Yeah,
So
also-
people know what we're trying to convey.
I think we need to
the-
prototype that. I think we need to, before we write it in the spec, I think we need to allow multiple vouchers, not define what they mean, allow people consuming to start making a UX judgment, and then out of that, learn what to put in the spec.
I'm talking about putting it on the.
What for sending with like choosing its Vouch should also be like on the sender side, an automatic thing. That's also like that Rose knows to pick. Rose might know to pick me over Evan in Martine's example. But does her website
But should
know
that
that?
information be
Yes.
publicized?
That's
Yes.
the thing,
Her website can
Well-
know that the same way IndieMap can know that.
Well, remember, Rose's website is a reflection of Rose. It makes decisions based on the data that Rose gives it.
Yeah, but the thing is if in the disavow, if in Martine's disavow list, Aaron's website is linked. Like I don't think that data should necessarily be published. The same way that people don't publish the source code for spam bots.
Agreed.
Because if you do that,
Agreed.
then spammers know exactly.
No,
what
it's a
to
setting.
get it
It's
right.
a setting in your plugin.
Exactly. So
Exactly.
It's a local setting.
only I know who is disavow, who I don't trust to give vouchers.
Yeah.
And then people sending me vouchers don't know that, and that's why I think it is important to be able to send multiple vouchers.
Yeah,
Because
and
it's
I would
very
say
easy to
3
pick
is a
the
good
wrong
number
one.
because if you have 2 and one of them is not good and one of them is good, then it's always going to end up in the moderation queue. But then if you are allowing 3,
I mean, you can
And
send as
somebody
many.
sends-
So because 3 is a good number, I would pick 7
okay.
as the what's syntactically allowed.
Oh, that way, yeah. We often probably are not going to need more than 3, but we're going to allow
and
it.
like
It should be a part.
implementations
Yeah.
can choose that they
And a
don't
power
feel
of 2
like
minus
handling
1.
But
more than
it
3,
should reject it if there are more.
But
than
more than
whatever
7
number
is
we
No,
set.
more than 7, you just say ignore.
More than 7, your web mention endpoint can even just say
Exactly,
it's a
that's-
bad request.
yeah, like
It's a
the number-
100 bad
No,
request.
no, I would say more than 7, you just take the first 7, you ignore the rest of the data. Just
Oh,
in
okay.
case we want to extend it in the future, we don't want to break existing implementations.
Sure,
So-
yes.
Yeah.
So
I'm
must
just
ignore
thinking about
It's
somebody
better
who's-
than must reject because we learned that lesson from XML.
And you should have a technical limit that's higher because
Yeah.
there is environments.
I'm
I
just-
would like it
I'm
if you
thinking of
send
somebody sending me
500
100 URLs to vouch for and then allowing my website to act as a denial of service generator for them by doing that, or crashing my website
but
because
you
I'm looking
shouldn't,
through 100
you don't
links.
even have to go and retrieve those posts until you've checked the domain with your list.
Yes.
Because if I say, oh, but Rose vouches for me, and you already know, like, oh, but I don't trust rosemaryorchard.com, you never have to go fetch her
Yeah,
site.
it's
Correct.
also
You're not
a
the
given that you're going to ignore multiple vouch URLs from the same domain,
Yeah,
Yes.
because
even though it doesn't expressly say
Yeah,
it. It's
Well,
logical.
same domain does not mean same author. That's also
But that's
another
a,
domain in the entire thing.
true.
So we have.
So
we
let's-
have that
can we-
aspect which
that's
is
problematic.
Is there an issue open for multiple vouchers?
Well, we have a repo and nobody's had it open, so I better go get it open. I think it's IndieWeb/Vouch.
I mean, then you really get like in the authorship verification problem, like from
Yeah.
like if I take
Support
Martine's-
multiple values of vouch. Open
Martine's
21
blog,
days
where the
ago.
author is on a completely
by
different domain. How do I know?
Someone.
that's
So yes, we do, and somebody
Right.
talked about it
Yeah.
21 days ago, and we
Okay.
didn't pick up on
By
it.
someone. Which someone is that?
Who's that? Jackie?
Yeah,
One thing that I would note is as a vouch sender,
I'm
my
more mad
site
it was
should
not someone in
automatically
the
pick
room.
the most recent vouchers to send, not the oldest vouchers. Because if I send the oldest vouchers and your website is going, hey, this person like vouched them 5 years ago, I don't care about that. I should be
Right,
sending the most
websites are
recent
allowed to
information.
pick their degree of like vouch freshness.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So
So I should be sending the most
Yeah.
recent information,
Yeah.
not the oldest information.
Probably.
and you also only need to store the most recent.
Oh look,
you
I have
don't even
control
need
of
to know,
the screens.
you always have control of the screens. You're the only one with the Mozilla account. You mentioned that earlier.
I know. Poor Yuli, I hope she feels better.
I hope so too.
Oh, speaking of which, did you post the photo?
No, I did not. Actually, oh god, there's like 5,000. It's gonna make my life difficult.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'm
Well, make
just
sure
being
that-
mean.
You
Want to
do
You're
make
not
sure
actually-
there's enough for a gift.
You go to the very first one, which is a normal static photo.
My eyes
and
are
that's the one you
closed.
post.
My eyes are open. Who else's eyes are open? Open. Oh, she's right in the middle and her eyes
Is there
are
not
closed.
an Apple machine?
Oh,
learning
and that's
magic
not a
with
good
all the
picture of
eyes?
David. Moving on.
Never a good picture of me.
I know, but you had your mouth open. You look like you're about to sneeze. So, in this one, you're just glaring.
That's not glaring.
That's
That's my
fine.
normal expression.
Caroline.
It's just a resting bitch face. Or whatever it's
No.
called.
Caroline, I
It's
think
resting
just-
neutral face.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Okay.
It does not suggest aggression. My
Okay.
normal face
Yeah.
is pretty
Mm.
standard.
I'm
I
just
have the
gonna
problem
like.
too. Okay, why are you looking like I'm not?
Okay, this is actually.
Yeah.
I forgot that there's audio attached to live pictures. And my phone is set to take live pictures automatically, so each of these are mini videos.
Oh, gee, in the.
So you've got everybody at the start looking like kind of weird, and then waving.
Because we were all figuring out, what did we do? Oh, wait, jazz hands.
Okay, because you took like 8 billion of these, they're all the same.
Yeah.
Oh, this one's better. I like this one. I'm gonna turn this one to good.
So yeah, I like the idea of sending multiple links as the vouch.
Where's the issue for the multiple?
It's issue number 3.
Where's the URL? Can you drop that into the notes?
Okay, I'm dropping in now.
Drop it.
And I
Select photos and
Drop it like it's hot.
I'm going. I can't drop as fast. It's at the bottom now.
So there's general consensus. Oops, I'm sorry.
I was just describing it.
Okay, we should capture the fact that we have general consensus that we should allow multiple values for vouch. And the practical, like the use cases seem to reflect that 2 or 3 make sense, but syntactically, I'm suggesting that we allow for up to 7 and ignore any more.
I would recommend 3 because of tiebreaker. Like with 2, you
an
can't
odd
have a
number
tiebreaker.
is better than an even number for sure, and prime numbers are best. So, sold. I'm just making a decision. The prime numbers are best.
Like with 2, you're still gonna have to go like,
Okay,
okay.
am I allowed to upload a GIF to the wiki?
You're allowed
Should
to,
be.
yeah, I think there's maybe a size limit, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it is a size. I have no idea how big it is.
Just push.
I'm adding that as a comment on the issue.
Oh, that feels correct. And obviously, you still have the problem with
But, yeah, so the
finding
general,
all vouch URLs.
the general heuristic or to apply is when picking vouch URLs, you should treat it by the strength of your social relationship. And that is deliberately fuzzy because that's really hard for spammers and abusers to hack.
But there should be some recommendations that are not too specific.
Suggestions, at least. Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm using isn't the specification term we recommend this, not we require it?
No,
From around
recommend
It
is.
depends on if you're talking about RFC 2119 or not.
Okay, am I? I
should,
cannot
may.
remember what it says.
Exactly,
off
you
the top
have
of my head.
should and may and
Must.
Yeah.
must.
I've never really found people that can properly explain the differences between all of those.
What's the lowest level one that allows you to say this is a good idea, but you don't have to do it because
May.
That's May. Okay. So there should be some Mays in here because we're clearly we're missing Mays, and as a result, people aren't implementing.
Well, it's May. It's not gonna be May. It is May.
I just realized I was taking a GMC photo. That's not gonna work.
You got my point, regardless of you poking fun of my syntax.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I apologize to everybody who is not happy with how pretty they are in this picture, but they're gonna
No,
have
may
fun with it.
is. We just established. It's not maybe. It's may is.
No, I want the best quality JPEG. 6.4 megabytes of it. Thank you very much. Let's save. Really, what are you doing to me?
So we talked about sending. So on the consuming side, I believe that the minimum UI you need
Disavow list.
is a disavow list, is a disavow UI and a disavow list. So you can like take people on or off of it. So in other words, you get a comment and it goes through your moderation automatically because the vouch succeeded. Then the UX is that the user selects a comment and says, and marks it as bad,
Yes, I fixed it.
whatever, like delete, block, mute, whatever, right? And then if it skipped moderation due to the vouch, the consequence of that should be disavowing that vouch source.
Yeah.
That's the minimum viable. Now, addition to that would be prompting the user, hey, your friend so-and-so vouched for this post. Do you want to disavow? And give them a choice. But that's more work. The minimum is you just automatically, if a user just deletes a comment that came through because of a vouch, you add that domain to the disavow list. And that way, anything that gets vouched that way just goes back into moderation, and you're no worse off than you were before.
No.
Okay? That's the minimum viable UI, in my opinion, David. And that will, I believe, if you deploy that default on into WordPress, and people install it and run it, two things will happen. One, people will realize that they can send comments with a vouch that don't wait for moderation, so that will incentivize them to implement sending vouches. Like, that would incentivize me to implement Vouch. Because the few times I've tested commenting on WordPress sites via web mention and it doesn't show up, and I'd be like, why did I even bother? It makes me not want to comment again. But if it showed up right away, then that would be like, cool, I'll do more of that. And that would be incentivized vouching.
There are other ways, by the way, it's an off-topic conversation for later, that we can incentivize you to post even with moderation.
No, social media has removed moderation as acceptable. That is something that's legitimately happened in terms of the UX that blogging software like WordPress has not caught up to.
What I would really like to do is make this super easy for the folks at micro.blog to implement, specifically Mountain, because he's basically on his own. Because if he implements that, at the moment, of course, there is no moderation there, basically. But it's getting to the point where there's little moderation.
You can't get comments from the outside, right? Or can you?
You can. Web mentions. Web mentions work.
Only if they also have a micro.blog account, I believe.
Yeah.
If they don't.
If they don't, then they have to set it up on their website. But the thing is what's pretty good is because micro.blog is a paid service. In general, you can trust micro.blog to vouch for sites at the moment, which means that then you've got a whole series of accounts that are already vouched for. And if they can then trust stuff that they've linked to, or other people on the site have linked to, then they end up with moderation built in without actually needing
It used to be that you could trust people on Twitter.
Yeah. But to start with, and then so say you leave micro.blog in as a verified vouch to start with, for say 6 months, and then you drop it, because by then everybody's got enough data that they should be able to trust each other.
You also have that some domains you'll recognize as a multi-user site where you want to go to a lower level, and some you'll recognize that the whole domain represents one person, which is a parsing opportunity. How do you recognize that? That's a question. How do you recognize if you have a URL whether or not it is a multi-author domain or a single author domain?
You don't.
Does it have an H card?
If the top level has an H card, you assume it's a single?
If it has a representative H card.
Yeah. So there's a way to figure that out and say, okay, micro.blog doesn't have it, so assume that it's multi-author, whereas someone else has a top level H card, assume it isn't.
Rose typo.
I fixed it.
Oh, you did? Berlin. Did you re-upload or you didn't rename?
Sounds like the others are done.
No, the waving GIF.
What time are we
Berlin
supposed to stop?
2019 waving.
Oh, I did fix it,
I
but
feel
apparently
like-
that didn't take.
I think we were supposed to stop at 6.
Yes. No, we were supposed to stop at 1:45.
Shoot.
So do we
And then
want
start
Closing session.
We're not dead. What? It's a good start.
We're not dead. Okay.
Let's
But
get
that is a
everyone
pretty important
back in here.
status right now.
So are we done with Vouch? Are we not done permanently, as in done with the session?
Do you feel like we made progress?
I feel like I know some things we can do, and I feel like since I recorded it, I can watch it again and talk about all of you guys afterwards.
Do you feel like this is a minimal viable product that you could start working on? That might be the...
No, only because there's something more important I have to do in web mentions before it.
But when
yes.
you get to that point, you feel like you can start.
I feel like I can start.
All right.
I mean, that's...
All right.
Let's gather everyone back in here.
This now concludes our broadcast day.
Closing session is in.
Closing session will be now. Closing session will not be live streamed, except on video.